The final dirty trick narcissists use when you grow too strong. Vertical bar Carl Jung's shadow warning. The hidden danger when you begin to break free. Carl Jung, in his profound exploration of the human psyche, uncovered a disturbing truth about narcissistic personalities, a revelation that most victims don't recognize until they've already fallen prey to it. When a narcissist senses they can no longer control you, they don't simply accept defeat and walk away. Instead, they deploy one final devastating psychological maneuver designed to recapture their dominance. This last desperate attempt at manipulation can unravel months or even years of your hard-won psychological healing in a matter of weeks. The danger lies not just in the manipulation itself, but in how precisely it targets your specific vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities the narcissist has carefully cataloged throughout your relationship. If you fail to recognize this final tactic and protect yourself against it, you risk sliding back into the damaging patterns you've worked so diligently to escape. This exploration will illuminate this last, most insidious trick in the narcissist's arsenal. But before we can understand the final manipulation, we must first comprehend the psychological battlefield that precedes it, the complex interplay of power, control, and identity that defines narcissistic relationships. The narcissist's greatest fear, beyond abandonment. Many assume that narcissists primarily fear abandonment or rejection. While these concerns exist, Jung's analytical psychology reveals something far more profound. Their deepest terror is the moment when their victim achieves psychological sovereignty, when you become emotionally stronger and more psychologically integrated than they are. This fear stems from what Jung identified as the narcissist's inflated ego, a fragile psychological construct that requires constant external validation to maintain itself. Unlike a healthy ego that can withstand criticism and setbacks, the narcissist's sense of self is perpetually unstable, demanding continuous proof of dominance and superiority to ward off the terrifying emptiness that lurks beneath their carefully constructed facade. The narcissist's greatest terror isn't abandonment. It's the moment when their victim becomes psychologically stronger than they are. When you were emotionally vulnerable, confused, insecure, constantly seeking their approval or validation, you perfectly fulfilled their psychological needs. You were what Jung might call their narcissistic supply, a reliable source of ego reinforcement. Your self-doubt fed their grandiosity. Your compliance confirmed their illusion of control. Your admiration masked their profound inner emptiness. But something transformative happens when you begin to awaken to your own worth. As you start setting boundaries, cultivating self-trust, questioning their narratives, and refusing to participate in their power games, you fundamentally alter the relationship dynamic. You transition from being a source of narcissistic supply to becoming what the narcissist perceives as an existential threat, a challenge to the very foundation of their identity and control. The power inversion crisis. When the tables begin to turn, Jung conceptualized this dramatic shift as a power inversion crisis. As your psychological strength grows, the narcissist experiences a profound destabilization. The carefully constructed power dynamic they've maintained, with themselves positioned as superior and you as subordinate, begins to crumble. This crisis manifests in observable behavioral changes. The warmth, charm, and affection they once displayed, what therapists call love bombing, often vanishes, replaced by coldness, criticism, and calculated psychological attacks. These aren't random emotional outbursts. but strategic responses to their perceived loss of control. During this phase, narcissists typically escalate their traditional manipulation tactics. Gaslighting intensifies. They work harder to make you question your perceptions and memories. Triangulation increases. They introduce third parties to create jealousy or insecurity. Intermittent reinforcement becomes more extreme. Periods of cruelty followed by brief moments of kindness, creating a powerful trauma bond that's difficult to break. Yet these familiar tactics are merely preludes to their final, most sophisticated manipulation, one that emerges only when they recognize that their conventional methods are failing to regain control. Psychological projection warfare. The attack on your individuation. When narcissists realize they're losing their grip on you, they don't merely intensify old patterns, they fundamentally shift their strategy. They escalate to what Jung would recognize as psychological projection warfare, a calculated assault on your process of individuation. Individuation, a cornerstone concept in Jungian psychology, refers to the psychological process of becoming a whole, integrated individual, separate from collective identity and free from projections or unconscious identifications. It's the journey toward becoming your authentic self, independent and self-aware. For the narcissist, your individuation represents their ultimate defeat. This warfare operates through projection, the unconscious defense mechanism where one attributes unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or traits to others rather than acknowledging them in oneself. The narcissist projects their own fears, insecurities, and shadow aspects onto you, but with a strategic purpose: to undermine your growing autonomy and self-trust. The strategic shift, from targeting weakness to shaming strength. Here we encounter a crucial tactical change that many victims fail to recognize. Initially, narcissists thrived by exploiting your vulnerabilities, your insecurities, past traumas, and self-doubts. But as you heal and grow stronger, their strategy inverts completely. Suddenly, your emerging strengths become their primary targets. Instead of attacking what makes you weak, they begin to shame what makes you strong. Jung might call this strength shaming, a sophisticated tactic designed to make you feel guilty or ashamed for the very qualities that are setting you free. This manifests in statements carefully crafted to undermine your confidence in your own growth. You've changed, and not in a good way. You used to be so understanding and compassionate. Now you're just cold and selfish. Ever since you started therapy, that new job, making those new friends, you've become arrogant. Success has really gone to your head. You think you're better than everyone now. You're not the person I fell in love with anymore. The cruelty of this tactic lies in its precision. The narcissist isn't randomly criticizing you. They're specifically targeting the aspects of your personality that represent your liberation from their control. Strength shaming in action, recognizing the pattern. This strength shaming takes many forms, each tailored to attack specific aspects of your growth. Boundary setting. If you've learned to set healthy boundaries, they'll label you as selfish, uncaring, or cold. You never used to be so rigid and uncompromising, they might say, attempting to make your newfound self-protection feel like a character flaw. Finding your voice. If you've found your voice and begun to speak up for yourself, they'll characterize you as aggressive, argumentative, or too much. You're so confrontational now. They'll complain, trying to make your self-advocacy seem like inappropriate behavior. Building confidence. If you've built confidence and self-respect, they'll accuse you of being arrogant, self-centered, or narcissistic, a particularly ironic projection. You used to be so humble, they'll lament, attempting to make your healthy self-esteem feel like conceit. Developing independence. If you've developed independence, financial, emotional, or social, they'll frame it as abandonment or betrayal. "I guess you don't need anyone anymore," they'll say with calculated hurt, trying to make your self-sufficiency feel like a relational failure. Self-care. If you've begun to prioritize your own needs and well-being, they'll portray you as selfish and inconsiderate. "You only think about yourself these days," they'll accuse, attempting to make your self-care feel like neglect of others. This isn't casual criticism or genuine feedback. It's a deliberate psychological weapon forged to undermine you from within. It's the narcissist's attempt to convince you to abandon your power so they can reclaim control. Nostalgic manipulation, the psychological time machine. When strength-shaming alone proves insufficient to regain control, narcissists often escalate to an even more sophisticated method: nostalgic manipulation. This tactic attempts to transport you back in time, psychologically returning you to a version of yourself that was easier for them to dominate. Through carefully crafted reminiscence, they try to make you long for your former self, the self that existed before you recognized your worth and began setting boundaries. They create a revisionist history of your relationship, selectively highlighting positive moments while omitting the manipulation and control that characterized that period. They might say things like, "Remember how much fun we used to have before you got so serious about everything? You were so much happier before you started reading all those self-help books and going to therapy. I miss the spontaneous, carefree person you used to be, before you became so focused on boundaries and self-care. We had such a good relationship before all these changes. Don't you miss how things used to be? Everyone says you were more fun, kind, easygoing before." This is psychological time travel with a purpose, a deliberate attempt to make you nostalgic for a period when you were more compliant, less aware, and easier to control. The narcissist isn't actually missing the authentic you. They're missing the version of you that prioritized their needs above your own. The danger of nostalgic manipulation lies in its subtle power to make you question your own growth. You might begin to wonder if you have changed too much, or if your newfound boundaries are too rigid. You might start to miss aspects of your former self, or the relationship as it once was, not recognizing that what you're actually missing is a carefully curated illusion. The ultimate weapon: manufactured vulnerability. If both strength-shaming and nostalgic manipulation fail to break your resolve, narcissists typically resort to their final and most potent weapon: manufactured vulnerability. Jung observed that narcissists become keen students of your compassion. They carefully note exactly what triggers your empathy, care, and sense of responsibility, then weaponize these insights against you. At precisely the moment when you are strongest, when you've finally established firm boundaries and begun to believe in your own worth, they suddenly appear fragile, struggling, or in crisis. This apparent vulnerability is strategically timed to exploit your compassion and draw you back into the caretaking role. They might manufacture or strategically reveal a health scare or medical crisis, sometimes exaggerated or entirely fabricated, financial troubles, often self-created through impulsive decisions, family emergencies that only you can help with, emotional breakdowns or threats of self-harm, addiction relapses or mental health crises, professional failures or job losses, relationship problems with others that position you as their only true supporter. The timing of these crises is rarely coincidental. They emerge precisely when you've begun to establish independence or when you're finally enforcing boundaries that threaten the narcissist's control. Calculated crisis, the strategic timing of vulnerability. According to Jung's understanding of manipulative personalities, these crises are rarely random coincidences. Narcissists maintain a detailed mental inventory of everything that has historically made you feel guilty, responsible, or obligated to care for them. They know exactly which buttons to push to activate your caretaking instincts and override your boundaries. The manufactured crisis serves multiple psychological purposes. It reframes the power dynamic, positioning them as the victim and you as the potential rescuer. It creates an emergency exception to the boundaries you've established. It appeals to your compassion and empathy, often your greatest strengths. It triggers guilt if you maintain your boundaries during their time of need. It triggers guilt if you maintain your boundaries during their time of need. It provides a socially acceptable reason for you to re-engage with them. It allows them to test how firm your boundaries actually are. This manipulation is particularly effective because it targets your virtues rather than your weaknesses. Your compassion, loyalty, and desire to help others are admirable qualities, but in the hands of a narcissist, they become levers of control. Self-sabotage as manipulative strategy. Perhaps most disturbing is the narcissist's willingness to create genuine problems in their own lives to facilitate this manipulation. They may engage in deliberate self-sabotage to generate crises that require your intervention. They might neglect their health until a manageable condition becomes serious, sabotage their own professional opportunities, or deliberately underperform at work, create or escalate conflicts with family members, friends, or colleagues, engage in financial mismanagement or impulsive spending, neglect important responsibilities until they create genuine emergencies, abandon self-care routines or medication regimens, engage in substance abuse or other self-destructive behaviors. This self-sabotage serves a calculated purpose: to create authentic problems that require your help, thereby drawing you back into their orbit. The goal isn't merely to receive support, it's to force you to sacrifice your newfound autonomy for their sake, to prove that they still maintain power over your decisions and boundaries. The just this once trap. The thin edge of the wedge. One of the most insidious phrases in the narcissist's vocabulary during this phase is, just this once. This seemingly reasonable request disguises a strategic attempt to breach your boundaries. I know you said you needed space, but just this once, I really need your help. I understand we're not supposed to contact each other, but just this once, could you make an exception? I know you don't usually lend money, but just this once, I'm in a real bind. I respect that you're focusing on yourself, but just this once, couldn't you be there for me? Jung would recognize this as a psychological wedge strategy, an attempt to create a small exception that can gradually be expanded. The narcissist isn't really asking for a one-time accommodation. They're testing whether your boundaries can be breached at all. If you acquiesce to just this once, you've provided critical information that your boundaries are negotiable under certain conditions. The narcissist will file this knowledge away and ensure that those conditions recur with increasing frequency. Each just this once exception risks undoing the psychological progress you've made. What begins as a single act of compassion can quickly become a slippery slope back into the caretaking role you've worked so hard to escape. The reality behind the illusion: genuine crisis versus manipulation. What makes this final manipulation so effective is that the crisis itself may be entirely real. The narcissist's health problems, financial troubles, or emotional distress might be genuine, but the decision to involve you specifically is calculated. They choose you not because you're uniquely qualified to help, but because you're the person most likely to sacrifice your boundaries out of compassion or guilt. They may have many other potential sources of support, but they select you because your energy and empathy are their most effective levers of control. This creates a painful dilemma. How do you determine when someone's need is genuine versus when it's being used as manipulation? How do you maintain compassion without compromising your boundaries? Differentiated compassion. The path forward. Jung introduced the concept of differentiated compassion, the ability to feel genuine empathy for someone's suffering without making yourself responsible for fixing it. This psychological discernment is vital for protecting yourself from the narcissist's final manipulation. True compassion is not about sacrificing your boundaries. It's about maintaining empathy while honoring your own psychological sovereignty. Differentiated compassion allows you to acknowledge, yes, this person is struggling, and that is unfortunate, without automatically concluding, therefore, I must be the one to rescue them, even at the cost of my own well-being. This distinction is crucial because narcissists deliberately blur the line between empathy and responsibility. They want you to believe that if you truly care about their suffering, you must sacrifice your boundaries to alleviate it. A false equivalence that serves their need for control. Jung famously stated that the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. When faced with a narcissist's manufactured crisis, ask yourself, is helping them in this way helping me become who I truly am? Or is it pulling me back into patterns that prevent me from that journey? The fight for authenticity. Why your strength threatens them. Jung's final insights reveal why narcissists fear your strength so profoundly. Your growth and authenticity serve as a mirror reflecting what they themselves have sacrificed in pursuit of control and false superiority. Your journey toward wholeness reminds them of their own fragmentation. When you refuse to shrink yourself to make them comfortable, when you stand in your authentic power despite their attempts to shame or manipulate you, you aren't just setting a boundary. You're demonstrating a path they could have taken but didn't. You embody the road not taken in their own psychological development. This is why they fight so desperately to pull you back down. Your freedom is a constant reminder of their own internal imprisonment. Your authenticity highlights their falseness. Your integration illuminates their fragmentation. Your freedom is their desperation. The narcissist's final dirty trick, whether it takes the form of strength shaming, nostalgic manipulation, or manufactured vulnerability reveals more about their desperation than their power. These tactics only emerge when they recognize that their conventional methods of control are failing. Every escalation in their manipulation is, paradoxically, evidence of your growing strength. Their increasingly desperate attempts to regain control are proof that you are succeeding in reclaiming your autonomy. Jung would want you to remember, true psychological strength isn't immunity to manipulation. It's the ability to recognize manipulation, name it for what it is, and choose your authentic path regardless. It's maintaining your boundaries even when doing so triggers guilt, doubt, or compassion. The moment you become truly free. The narcissist's final manipulation only succeeds if you forget who you've become. If you allow their crisis to override your hard-won boundaries and self-respect. But once you recognize their tactics for what they are, desperate attempts to reclaim control, you realize that their very need to manipulate proves your freedom. Jung discovered a profound truth. The moment you stop being controllable is the moment you begin truly living. No crisis, no matter how convincing or emotionally compelling, is worth surrendering the authentic selfhood you've worked so hard to cultivate. Recognizing the final dirty trick of narcissists doesn't mean becoming cold or uncaring. It means developing the discernment to tell the difference between genuine human connection and manipulative control tactics. It means honoring your compassion while also honoring your boundaries. Protective strategies, guarding your psychological sovereignty. As Jung's analytical psychology teaches us, awareness is the first step toward freedom. Once you understand the narcissist's final manipulation tactic, you can develop specific strategies to protect yourself. Recognize strength shaming. When someone criticizes your growth, independence, or boundaries, ask yourself, is this genuine feedback from someone who wants me to thrive? Or is this an attempt to make me smaller and more controllable? Healthy criticism builds you up. Strength shaming tears you down. Question nostalgic appeals. When someone reminds you of how things used to be, carefully examine whether that past was truly better for you or simply more comfortable for them. True growth sometimes requires leaving behind relationships and patterns that no longer serve your authentic self. Practice. Differentiated compassion. When faced with someone else's crisis, ask, is this person reaching out to me specifically because I can uniquely help, or because I'm most likely to sacrifice my boundaries? Remember that providing support doesn't require sacrificing your psychological health. Support creates crisis response protocols. Before emergencies arise, decide in advance what kinds of help you can offer without compromising your well-being. Having pre-established boundaries helps you respond to genuine needs without being manipulated by manufactured crises. Build a support network. Surround yourself with people who celebrate your growth rather than punishing it. When you're uncertain whether a situation is manipulative, consult trusted friends or professionals who can offer objective perspectives. Conclusion. The freedom of psychological sovereignty. The final dirty trick of narcissists, the attempt to manipulate you through strength shaming, nostalgic appeals, or manufactured crises, is ultimately a testament to your growth and emerging freedom. These tactics only become necessary when their conventional methods of control have failed. Jung believed that the true measure of psychological maturity is the ability to stand in your own sovereignty to honor your authentic self even when others attempt to shame, manipulate, or control you. This sovereignty doesn't mean isolation or selfishness. It means engaging with others from a place of wholeness rather than compulsion or fear. When you recognize and resist the narcissist's final manipulation, you aren't just protecting yourself. You're affirming the possibility of authentic human connection based on mutual respect rather than control. You're demonstrating that relationships can exist without domination, that love can thrive without submission, that caring doesn't require self-abandonment. In the words of Jung, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. The narcissist's final trick can only succeed if you forget who you've become, if you abandon the wisdom you've gained through your journey of awakening. No crisis, however convincing, is worth surrendering your hard-won freedom. No manipulation, however subtle, deserves the sacrifice of your authentic self. By recognizing the final dirty trick of narcissists, you protect not just your boundaries but your very soul, your right to become who you truly are.